Okay, today is Sunday, January the 7th, 2024. Isn't day Epiphany Day, Dad?
It is.
It's yeah, yes, yes.
It
And
is. It's
and
the day when the Magi are said to have finally got uh, to Bethlehem to see Jesus.
and today is another episode of Mendel's Musings with Reverend Dr. Mendel Adams and myself, Vicki Warnicki. So today, Dad, let's talk about how we ended up in Minot, North Dakota.
My. And a lot of things happened out there. I was trying to think in terms of how many years we were out there. We were out there a full 4 years. Were we there longer
You
than that?
you were out there for 4 years. I was out there for three, a little over three, because you were out there like a little bit
Weren't you
longer.
there for the whole
No,
high school?
no. We moved there when I was 16, in 1979, November of 79, and then I moved away in May of 1982, like the day after high school graduation. So I started high school in Grand Rapids, and we moved in the middle of the year, my sophomore year, to North Dakota. And I remember when you got the job, the one thing I said was, because when we moved from Indiana to Michigan, we moved at the end of my seventh grade, and I didn't know anybody over the summer except my cousins. And when I started school, the kids didn't know I was new. And I said, when I move to North Dakota, when we move, I want to move in the middle of school year so kids will know that I'm new.
Well, there you go. I was going to apologize for moving you out in the middle of the year like
No,
that.
that's was my choice. That's what I told you I wanted to do.
That was a curious thing. I had I was bumping around after the experience in Marion and losing the election, and then your mother went through the Equal Rights Amendment deal, and I basically closed down my office, my insurance office, during that time, and by the time we'd gone through all that, uh, I was thoroughly depressed. And so to make a short story long, and we talked about it elsewise on one of the other musings, uh, we moved sold our home and got rid of everything and moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan, moved into the basement of my sister Marlene and her husband Charles. And that was a bad time for me. But I was um, thrashing about trying to find my way. What I was doing, I sold used cars, even though I didn't know the difference between a Chevy and a Ford. I really didn't. I had to go out and look at every car and take notes on them. I did pretty good selling cars because I was so desperate. But
And you're such
uh,
a people person too. I mean,
yeah, well, there you go. And I was hungry. Uh, but we finally got out of that. Your mother got a job working for the uh, she worked for Ganto's clothing store that sold upscale women's clothing, and so between the two of us, we were able to make a little bit of money. Uh, and uh, and then she got a job with the Arts Council in Grand Rapids. And during that particular point in time, excuse me, cut that out, Vicky. During that point in time, I had switched jobs and got a job selling life insurance door to door, literally a debit salesman, where I went from door to door carrying a big, big book, and somebody give you a quarter for your insurance, and you'd write it down on the book, and had to go out every week and collect on the route and Oh, it was a mess. Um, I was elected president of the union for insurance salesmen. In that
No, that
union, I still have the union card on that.
I didn't know.
Uh, you didn't know that?
I did
It
not
was
know that.
AFL-CIO insurance carriers
Oh my
union,
gosh.
and I got in that. Uh, and then I read an ad in the paper that there was a New Start health agency that was opening up, and they were advertising for nurses, and it was a professional standards review organization, and they gave just a little burp on there about how that they were trying to improve the quality of healthcare, and that they were instituting a peer review program for doctors. And so I went in and applied for the job. Now they were advertising for a nurse, Vicki, and I'm an insurance man who had been a preacher man, and I went in and applied for a nurse's job. And they said, "Well, Mr. Adams, uh, you don't qualify for this job. This doesn't meet your qualifications. We're impressed, but this." I said, I understand that. And they said, well, why would you apply? And I said, because I like what you said you're trying to do, and I want to be part of it. And so the head nurse said to me, she said, well, I'll introduce you to Harry, our executive director,
I
and I'm
remember
sure
her.
he'll want to meet you. And I went in to see Harry, and Harry said, well, we're going to need to hire a professional relations director sometime soon. And I said, okay, what's that all about? Well, he said, this is a doctor's organization, and the professional relations director has to be able to convince doctors that we're doing good things for them instead of bad things to them. I said, what's the truth? He said, somewhere in the middle. I said, I'm your man. And he hired me
I'm
on the
Harry.
spot without any more to do. He hired me. Well, then, after I'd been there for a while, not very long, there was one of those things that opened up at the Harvard School of Public Health for training, and the Professional Standards Review Organization, Harry Park, uh, paid for me to go to Harvard and take those classes. It was 6 hours of graduate school at Harvard School of Public Health, and it was in health management. And so I went. I
I
just
remember when you went. Yeah.
took off and went to it. Uh, uh, your mother had been to one at Harvard before I did, on the arts management, and so I knew something about what to expect. And I spent the summer there. I don't know how long it was now, but they said it was 6 hours of master level credit, and that's what they gave me on the what do you call it,
On your
the
certificate.
transcript.
It was
The
probably like a
They gave me a
intense.
certificate, but they also said there was a transcript from
Yeah.
Harvard School of Public Health that said that.
I remember going to visit you. My first airplane trip was mom and I went to Boston to see you that summer.
Oh yeah.
I remember I because I also remember my ears really popped and they hurt, but that was my first airplane trip.
Well, that was a fun time. That was a good time for me, and it helped me to get my head together and realize that there was a life after the ministry, and after politics, and after selling life insurance.
And used cars.
And so I took that class, and then I came back and had a good career in that, and did a lot of worked with the members of Congress that were over healthcare nationally, and our local congressperson, and we got a good relationships worked out with them, and it went so well for me, Vicki, that I don't know if you know the story. I had members of the board of directors that they were made up of all doctors. That was only doctors were members. In the board of directors, there were a couple of the doctors that got in their head that I should be their executive director. And so they came to me and said that they wanted to get rid of Harry and wanted me to take the position. And I said, I don't think that would be a good idea. I said, Harry's been my mentor and so forth, and I didn't feel like I should give any oxygen to that. So instead, I told Harry, I said, Harry, some people are talking to me about wanting me to take an executive position, so I want to be on the lookout for if there's something. Well, it just so happened that in the paper put out from the National, there was an ad that said that North Dakota needed to hire an executive director for the whole state of North Dakota. And so Harry said, "Here's what you can do." So he was saving his job too, see.
Yeah.
And so to make a long story short, I filled out the resume and so forth, and sent it in, and I eventually got that job, and they hired me, and we moved out there. And your mother followed me later. I think I moved out. I moved out before you and your mother.
Yes. Yeah. You moved out first, like in the summer or the fall. And
Yeah,
then you came and you drove either, I don't know, we drove from Michigan
I
to,
think that's right.
and I remember and you drove the whole way. I had taken driver's ed, but I didn't necessarily have my permit, and you wouldn't let me drive at all, even though it's like I had a little bit of driving experience. But and there was a couple times where I was worried about you driving, and it was November, so it was snowy in that area.
Yes, it was.
Now, if I recall correctly, too, the organization, the PSROs, were funded by a federal grant, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
So
Yeah.
they were state agencies or they were
No,
private agencies.
they were private agencies. It was a 501c4, I think it was, agency, and but we had a board of directors that was made up of all physicians, and every physician in the state could join. In North Dakota, there were 57 hospitals that did Medicare, Medicaid, and in order for the bill to be approved for payment, it had to come through our office,
Oh,
and we had to guarantee that it was necessary procedure, that it was quality care. We did what they call medical care evaluation studies. We did studies, and you would look at them and say, okay, how is it that cataracts was a good example, and the cataract surgery, and they kept them for so many days, but there were some that didn't keep them so many days, and so we got the doctors together that did cataract surgery and had them to say what is the most efficient and cost effective way of doing that, and then that was the standard that we applied to all the doctors in the state, and that they had to meet that, and if they didn't come up to that standard, then they weren't paid.
wow.
Medicare, Medicaid wouldn't pay it.
And they
And
couldn't make the patient pay it too, right?
I'm sorry.
They couldn't like go after the patient and
Oh,
make
oh
the
no,
patient.
no, no. They had to eat it. They had to eat it. And of course, the doctors. That's why Harry said what he did about doing bad things to him instead of
Yeah.
good things for him. because some of them really didn't like the idea of anybody looking over their shoulders, even though it was their colleagues. It was a peer review system in which we set up peer review. We had a peer review nurse in every hospital who was trained to work with them to make sure that they got together on everything. And then we would do studies based upon the information that we got on the computer. We had a very strong computer program, and it would tell how long a person had been in the hospital, what the circumstances were, and what the treatment was. And you just meshed all these things together. Then you go in and say, okay, here's what it costs to have this done here. Here's what it costs to have it done here. What's the difference, and who's get the best outcome? And so it was quite good. I had a good group of physicians. I really did that were my board of directors. That they really went after that. And if somebody was doing something they shouldn't do, there was one physician, for instance, that we found that there was a family, an extended family that had something like 5 or 6 kids in it. And in one year, he did uh, uh, adenoidectomy and tonsillectomies on all the kids in one year.
Oh my God.
And so we got the doctors together, and they said, this is substandard medicine. We just will not work with that. And we basically pulled him in, and his peers told him, you can't do that, and here's why you can't do that, and we're going to put sanctions against you if you do it. One doctor we put out of business
Wow.
in rugby. Uh,
So, oh yeah. So you could actually impose sanctions on them
yes,
that
yes.
would mean they couldn't take any more
Yeah.
Medicare.
Well, it means that they just couldn't get paid. They could do it.
Oh, okay.
They
Okay.
couldn't get paid.
That was the only
But
sanction.
if they didn't get paid, they weren't going to do it. And the hospital wouldn't approve it, see, for.
But weren't there, I mean, I remember so many stories about, you were finding like crap that doctors were doing, but wasn't there also some doctors you found that you ended up reporting to the state medical board because they were committing
Yes,
malpractice too?
yes. That was the one that we actually put out of practice.
Ah,
He went back to farming. Uh, and you being an attorney, you will appreciate this. We had a hearing in which he was appeared before his peers. He came there to Minot with his attorney, and the attorney came in with a beautiful uh, briefcase, set it up on the table, very strong presence. Well, when they left, he left his briefcase behind. So I had my secretary to open it up to get his address so we could send it to him. And what she found in there, the only thing she found in there was a box of Crayolas.
oh, oh,
That was the
gee.
only thing that was.
Oh my God.
I said, he, I said he's toast. He's
The guy got what he paid for.
toast.
Oh, that's
Uh,
too funny.
so anyhow, I got hired there and was there for 4 years, 5 years
Yeah,
maybe. I
yeah.
think 5 years.
I think it was 4 years because you went to McPherson in, or yeah, you went to McPherson in 82, 83.
I think it was 82. I think.
Yeah, 82. Yeah, yeah,
So I've lost track of the time schedules. They all mush
yeah,
into.
right. I always, put it in terms of like the big events, right? Like graduation
Yeah,
when we
yeah,
got married. But, I will say that, uh, like, I wanted to move so the kids would know I was new, but and Minot turned out to be a really great place, really, despite the really cold weather. The people were very friendly. I
yes,
I still am good friends with people from high school, even though I graduated 40 years ago. And the and I think the one advantage of the of Minot was because it was, the Air Force Base.
Oh yes.
Kids were used to people moving in and out. And so if you
And
didn't,
you weren't strange.
right. And it was not strange to have people, new people coming in. And it was, if you didn't start getting to know people, then you wouldn't get to know them because they'd be gone like a
Exactly.
year, 2 or 3 years. And I think that made a difference than, the attitudes in Grand Rapids maybe. But I still remember my first day at the high school. I was and I remember a biology class. I was at a biology class, and the teacher was talking about blood typing and how they decided the different blood types and everything. And he was I don't remember the teacher, but I remember one of the students. I actually remember who it is too. His name was Kelly, and he and I, after he was like very, everybody was gathering around, and of course I was just kind of standoff, and he was like, no, no, come on, he like welcomed me into the circle to see what was going on,
Uh-huh.
made me feel really welcomed. And then, you know, as I got to know him better, realized that Kelly was one of those guys that was very gruff. He was a football player. He didn't always get along with everybody. And I'm like, well, he was really nice to me my first day. I told him that at one of the 30th high school reunion. I said, Kelly, you don't realize how just really welcoming you were to me. And he thought that was pretty funny. But I just, it,
Well, I remember there was one thing that I remember that I want to get into that
okay.
involved you before I forget it. One day it was pouring down rain. You were in high school, of course, and it was pouring down rain, and so I had taken some pictures. Your mother had taken some pictures in the camera, and I took them to the film to the camera shop to get them developed. While I
Yeah.
was there, they said, Mr. Adams, you've got these. Said, did you want to pick up for Vicki too? I said, I didn't realize she had any pictures here. I said, oh, yes, she has some here. I said, okay, I'll take them too. So I picked them up and took them home. I got in the car and I opened them up to see, like you do, look at the pictures. Vicki, somebody at the Air Force Base, apparently named Vicki Adams, had sent a row of pictures of a party that she'd been at, and she was an African American girl. And why that was important was that the picture was of these people mooning the camera, these big black bare asses hanging out. And I said, oh my God, what is this? Now, I should have taken those home and showed them to you and said and act like I thought it was you. But I think I took them back to him and said, there's been a mistake. This is Vicki Adams, but it's not my Vicki.
Well, you wanted your money back. You didn't want to pay
I
for it.
wanted my money back. That was so funny. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Oh my God. I do. And I think I recall you when I got home, you were like, so did you go to a party with a bunch of black people at the Air Force Base? I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, that is too funny.
But the thing that I remembered about the my involvement with the people in Minot was very similar to yours. I had a very welcoming Ted Boldy right away. I got to know him because he was the guy with the uh, employment agency that was right across the street from my office. And so I went over there to talk to him about hiring people for my agency. I think we had 14 people in my office that I had to have on board.
And you got to hire them all, right?
Well, no, most of them were already there,
Oh,
but
okay.
I had to hire some people in, and and so Ted introduced me to the Masonic Lodge, and I got very much involved in the Masonic Lodge. When your mother um, your mother left to go for the Equal Rights Amendment campaigns down in Oklahoma, then and eventually Washington, and uh, during that particular point in time, I felt like I needed to have some other outlet. So
Yeah.
Lodge helped fill that for me very much.
Yeah. And then I joined the Rainbow Girls my
And you
senior
joined the
year.
Rainbow Girls, and
Yep.
there was an interesting story about them uh, trying to teach you the go through the ceremony, the ritual, and so forth, and it was based upon the uh, 13th chapter of First Corinthians, and so when they messed up the wording on it, you corrected them, even though you weren't supposed to know what it was all about.
I wasn't supposed to talk, and they were like one of the girls, the couple of girls would get flustered, and I would repeat it really softly to them. They would, yeah. The woman who was like the mother superior, I don't remember what her name was. She thought that was funny that I
Yeah.
was that
Well,
I
my
knew it.
dear,
I'm like, well, yeah, you're just reciting a Bible scripture that I've heard my whole life.
we were while your mother was there before she had left. Uh, we joined the Methodist Church because
Yes,
that was the most liberal congregation in town, and we
Vincent United Methodist,
Methodist. Uh-huh.
and I played the handbell choir there. And
Yes, yes. And on Layman Sunday, they had me to preach.
oh,
And I didn't know it at the time, but the district superintendent and his family were there in services that day. They didn't introduce him, but he was there in service and heard me preach. So he asked me afterwards if I'd be willing to take a preaching assignment. And so I said, sure, I can do that. And so he appointed me to a 3-point circuit, which was Max Bass, Langston, and Donnybrook. It was a 3-point circuit. And so I'd go out, and it was a 135-mile circuit that, and they were connected by little country roads that, the little roads that literally had grass growing up in the middle of the road. Um, I don't know if you ever went out to one of those with me because I
I
had
think
to.
I went out a couple times, but
Oh,
not
I had to leave
regularly.
early in the morning. There
Yeah.
one Sunday, I and the roads weren't marked, so you had to go by whatever the odometer said about where to turn. And it was snowing real bad, and I passed it up and got almost up into Canada before I realized I'd not taken the turn where I was supposed to.
Well,
So
we were only 40 miles from Canada, so it didn't take long
uh,
to get to
so
Canada.
I came back and I went back to Langston, and the Langston Church, one nice little church. That town had 4 people in their high school graduating class that year, and because it was such a small class, Johnny Carson had them come to Tonight Show, and they did a big deal about that small class there on Johnny Carson's show, and that was kind of funny. But I came in late. I was about 10 minutes late getting into the church that morning, and a guy came out in his bib overalls and says, "Well, preacher, if you ain't here when it's time to start, we go home." So I didn't get paid for that week. Uh,
Oh, that's just rude, isn't it? You should
I
have.
know, I
I mean,
know,
how
but
much did they pay you?
they
How much?
were they were just nice people, just really nice. And
How much did you get paid for doing that, though?
oh, I don't know, $10, something like
Oh,
that.
but
And
then you saw the ad in the paper
yes,
about Granville.
yes, and that particular morning, I had bottomed out in my little Concorde car, the Motors Concorde car, the little red car
I
I had.
do. I love that little car.
Bottomed out, knocked the muffler kafluti out off of it, and so I finally limped on home, and I sat down in the chair and was reading the paper and went to sleep. And when I woke up, the one ads were there, and I looked them up and I read it in a church out of Granville, North Dakota, the Hope Congregational Church, which was a UCC church, and I didn't know much at all about the UCC. Uh, and anyhow, they were advertising for a preacher. And I thought that was really funny that the church would be advertising in the one ads for a preacher. And I was laughing about that because, I was used to the Methodist system where the
Right.
bishop was the one that appointed you, somebody appointed you, and you went there. Here they were advertising in the one ads. I thought, well, that could be interesting. So the next morning, I'm uh, at work, and I call your mother, and I said, dig out that paper, find that one ad. And so she did, and she gave me the telephone number, and I called them up, and they said, we're having a meeting of the deacons and deaconesses tonight at church. Would you be willing to come out and meet us? And I did, and we fell in love. We just fell in
Is
love.
that you didn't even have to mail anything in, huh?
There's no other way to say it. We just fell in love. And I said, I said to myself, even if they don't pay me anything, I'll take this. I'll take this charge if they offer it to me. And on my credentials as a deacon in the Methodist Church, they hired me and then told the conference minister that they'd hired this Methodist preacher to be their pastor. They didn't have any idea who I was,
Right.
where I'd gone to school, none of that. So I had to do all the paperwork and show them that. And I said, I'm not schismatic. I'm not trying to take your church over. Uh, and, so uh, that was a good experience for me. And I
Yeah.
was
Granville
ordained.
was a great place.
I was fully ordained in the United Church of Christ while I was there.
I
Couple.
found the audio tape from that, the
Oh,
cassette
really?
tape from the ordination. Yeah.
Uh, so that was a good experience, and introduced me to another way of doing church.
Yeah. And the UCC. I
And
remember
Brother Franklin saved it for me.
I did the confirmation class for you.
Yes.
I was like three students, I believe. I hope I, did some good for them. I think they were good kids, and they, came every week when I was there, and
None of them became axe murderers.
that's right. And then we did the fasting thing where
Oh
we
yes.
the
What
for
was it?
hunger.
It was for bread for the world. I think it was.
Yes, yeah, where we did it, and it was like I think it was more than the confirmation class. It was,
Oh yeah, there was a good sized group. We got
and
some
we
pictures where we painted our faces red.
yes, we did clowning. Yeah, yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a
We
lot of fun.
fasted. We fasted for 36 hours, I think it was,
Yes.
and broke fast and collected money to pay it. And I remember I asked uh, your French teacher if he would sponsor you, and he said, "No, I don't believe in doing that."
I didn't know that. Monsieur
Yes,
Cohen said no.
he,
Oh, geez, he's weird. He
he,
was strange.
well, I pay.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But,
Oh,
but you were able to, you went to France from
yes.
too, didn't you?
Yes. My junior year, spring of my junior year, April, I was there over Easter and with Monsieur Cohen's the group. You and mom made sure I could go, and that was a great experience. I was there for 10 days, and 6 of the days I got to actually stay with a family in
Wow.
Nantes. And over Easter weekend, we actually were at their kind of family home on this island off of the of Nantes that was like built in like the 17 1800s. And the island didn't allow they only allowed cars to ferry you from the like you took a boat over and then a car to like a taxi, but there were no other cars allowed, and there were
Yeah.
bicycles from World War II on there. I mean, it was really cool. And I actually went
Or
to
like a Mackinac Island.
Yeah, yeah. And then I went to school with the because there was a 15-year-old boy who was like the sponsor family, and his name was Jean Michel, and he had a older brother named Dominique. Dominique could actually speak English. Jean Michel didn't. I think Jean Michel was disappointed that I was a girl and not a very pretty girl, not as, you know, and
Oh,
he
I thought
was,
you know.
I know, but you know what I mean. It's like he was disappointed, I think, but um, I went to school with him, and I remember sitting in history class, and they were studying American history, and I could understand what they were saying. The teacher was saying because it was all in French. Then I went to math class, and it was algebra, and of course, I was did really well in math, and I really understood that. It was just basic algebra. Jean Michel, when he sat in the back of the row, he didn't really care. And the teacher was asking for the students to, speak up and answer the question, and nobody was doing it. And I came this close to doing it. And I knew if I did, it would totally embarrass him. So I didn't do it. I just bit my tongue. But then when we got back home and I told his parents, uh, he had a little sister named Frederique. She was really cute. She was 7. And his dad was a banker, and I can't remember what his mom did, but I think his mom may have just been a stay-at-home mom. But anyway, I told them that I could understand, and that I told them that story. And the idea was I could speak in French as much as possible, and uh, even though they could speak English really well, it was just a really cool experience. And then there was a girl from Canada who joined our group. Her name was Val Cohen, and her and I became instant friends. Actually, Monsieur Cohen. No, wait, her last name wasn't Cohen. What was her name? Val something. Anyway, Monsieur Cohen asked me to kind of watch out for her. I guess he figured, I would be the friendliest one. And so her and I kind of teamed up, and we ended up hitting it off and being really good friends. And
Good.
it was a great experience. It was really fun. So,
Well, I felt that the Minot experience was a good experience for me
oh,
altogether.
the
Uh,
education I got at Minot High School was amazing. I had, I realized now, or I, realized since then, especially when I had kids, the opportunity. I mean, I went to high school there starting in 79 to 82, and they had a computer lab with like 10, 15 computers, Apple computers. I took computer math. I took all these math classes. Uh, and they had a Olympic sized swimming pool. They had the big, photography class. That's where I learned photography a
well,
little
we had
more.
an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Do what?
We had an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
We did
We sure did.
in that
I
apartment.
mean, there and yeah, in Minot, in that
An Olympic sized swimming pool in that apartment.
yes, it was a big
School
one.
had a huge swimming pool, and so we had to take at
Mm.
least one class of swimming. To everybody had for PE had to take at least one class of swimming at the Magic campus. But all the different opportunities that I had that I would not have had, in Indiana for sure. And the school was, even though in Grand Rapids, I did go to that city high school, which was the school for the gifted kids, but they didn't have a lot of. That was very academic. There was not a lot of extracurricular stuff with that place. But so Minot is just I really, and I was debate. I did debate in Minot. I was playmakers. I was involved in the theater stuff and really enjoyed that. And yeah, Minot was really it's a great town. If it wasn't just so damn
Did,
cold.
didn't you take a summer appointment too at the down in the Badlands?
I did not do that. A lot of the uh, like people would go to Medina or Menor. What was that touristy place?
Yeah,
I did
where
not. No, I did not take one of those
oh
jobs.
I see. I thought you did.
You guys went there when, Jim, my boyfriend, was there working, but I did not go. I did not work.
Okay.
I worked at ice cream place, and then I worked at a restaurant in the mall, like the
Yeah,
upscale
well,
restaurant.
State
State
Street.
Street, yeah. Upscale, we put lemon in the water in the
Oh
glasses.
yeah, so yeah, very fancy, very fancy.
Yes, very fancy, very fancy. But I remember when we first, because we got there on my birthday, and you took me out to State Street. I think it was no, it was another fancy restaurant. I don't remember which one, but it was a fancy restaurant. And I remember you pulled up to the mall and you had all the outlets, and I'm like, "What is that?" And you're like, "We got to plug in the car." And then I had duck l'orange or Peking duck because I thought that'd be something fancy, and I didn't end
Oh,
up like
oh,
I didn't like it.
yeah, it's got to be made right, and most
Yeah,
times it's not. The last duck I got was not that famous.
yeah, yeah. That would have been better with just a steak, but it was
Yeah,
my birthday and I was doing something fancy, and mom had had a birthday party for me before I left Michigan with my friends there. I remember that. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Why not? Why not? Why not? Reason's a reason.
yeah. We had, and now Crystal and her family are up there.
Yeah, they're in Fargo, right?
Yeah, they are now.
But I think her folks are still in Minot, aren't they?
Yes, they are
Yeah.
still out there on that little farm.
Yeah, that first house that you rented out there that was close to the Turtle Mountains.
Yes,
I remember the wind blowing in and ooh,
the temperature, the wind chill got 100 below zero. They quit measuring it, and
it
it
was
was,
too cold to snow. I remember that too.
yeah,
It
it
was
was
just
just gasoline.
it was a dry cold.
You were talking about this confirmation thing. One of the memories that I have is that one of the kids that came to confirmation class, it was an afternoon class, I think, and not the Sunday morning thing, but the afternoon thing. And he came on a snowmobile, and he didn't have his ears covered, and his ears swelled up about the size of my hand, and they were like frozen. They were really bad. I was afraid he was going to have snowbite or
Frostbite. Yeah, he
uh,
probably did have frostbite.
uh,
I got frostbite on my ears once. I had the car that you had gotten me, that old I think it was a Buick Skylark or something,
uh,
and didn't have to have a key to turn it on. And it was really cold, and I don't know if I must not have plugged it in or something at the high school, but it wouldn't start.
oh
So
dear.
we were living in the apartments. So I walked home because it was only like, 10 minutes away. It was just and I had a hat and I had gloves. I had a full length wool coat. I had a scarf. I had moon boots, but I didn't have anything covering my ears. And by the time I got home, my ears were burning and they were
Yeah,
just cold and hot at the same time. I remember they
yeah.
really hurt. So I think I went out to the mall and got earmuffs. And then I remember one time mom was off, saving the world. It was just you and I in that little apartment, and you had gone on a business trip, and I came to pick you up at the airport, as I would do, and you had, we were waiting in baggage claim, and you had this little box that was like elaborately wrapped and stuff. You had it in a bag, and then you took it out and you gave it to me. It was a stuffed Garfield, and it was so cute. I just remember it's like he goes, "Well, I saw this and I thought of you." And I'm like, "Oh, you probably don't remember that, huh?"
No, I don't.
I just remember like, "Oh, Dad." It was really cute. It's really sweet. It was very sweet. But it was like this fancy box. I remember with a bow on it and everything, and it was a little stuffed Garfield.
Yeah.
I thought that was adorable.
Poor people have poor ways.
Hey, it was a perfect gift for me.
That's right. Well, I don't know. I probably got a lot of other memories of Minot that are floating around out there. But
Well, we went up to the um, International Peace Gardens.
yes,
We went
yes.
up there. I remember when it was not cold. I remember we went up there. Uh,
Took Jake up there when he was just a real small little guy.
yeah, that was really cool. And we did go. Uh, I went to lots of concerts. Oh, and at the North Dakota State Fair was in Minot. And you always were really good about getting me tickets to all the concerts that were there. I saw some really great concerts, rock and roll concerts.
The Jets,
Yeah, yeah, Joan Jett and the Beach Boys, Mac Davis,
Waylon Jennings. The storm came in and he canceled because he was afraid that it was going to be bad. And of course, they booed him because
yeah,
he.
Pat Benatar. Now the Beach Boys storm came in and they just delayed it for a little bit, and then
Uh,
they came on, and as they were singing one of their famous songs, I can't remember now, but then a rainbow appeared over them while they
oh
were
yeah,
on stage. That was so cool. That was
yeah.
very cool. Yeah, it was, that was fun. That was fun to get to go to a lot of those concerts and see a lot that, I was amazed at
Uh,
the people they drawed in.
Joe and Debbie and Joshua, Debbie's son, moved out there too. I don't know why they moved out there, but they moved out there. And
Yep.
Joe got a job as a grease monkey, uh,
Doing
and
tires, right?
and was doing that, and just barely eking out a living. And so he and I decided we were going to go in business together. And Joe has always been really good about cars and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put up the money and we'd buy a car that he thought he could fix up. And then we'd take it to the auction and sell it and then split the profits. Well, we bought this little, uh, it was one of those United States postage trucks that, that you just stood up in. You couldn't sit down in it. And we bought this thing, and the key was broken off in the ignition. And so, to make a long story short, Joe and I decided that'd be it was a cute little thing, and so we bought it. I think we paid about $100 for it, maybe, and we bought it and fixed it up. We never could figure out how to do that key, but we could get it started. That was fine. You get it started, but then you couldn't you couldn't turn the key off. You couldn't get the key out. So I took super glue and we glued the tab where the key was broken. We just glued it back together and drove it into and they sold it like it was. And I think we made like $50 on that. So he and I, every once in a while, he'll send me a picture of one of those one of those little trucks. Say, "Hey, Dad, I think we can make some money on this one."
And that was the end of your enterprise, right?
And your mother needed a car. She's down in Oklahoma. She needed a car, and so the only car I had at that time, because one had been repossessed because we didn't pay for it before we moved out of Michigan. So we only had one car. I had that little Concord, nice little car. And your mother had bought that car. I mean, Charlie sold it to her. That's another story.
Yeah.
Uh, and she bought the car. And so that was the car that we had when we were out there. And she was saying she needed a car for her work down there in Oklahoma City. So she wanted the Concord. So I agreed to it, and she had the Concord. And so Joe had this little Buick Special that was in awful shape. It was maybe worth $50, and you had to push it to get it started, and you had to. I drove it from Minot down to Bismarck for a meeting, and it took 10 quarts of oil for me to put in it. I had to stop every once in a while and put a quart of oil in it because it was just leaking oil out so bad. And so I finally limped along and got that back home. And then Joe gave me another car, and I traded it in on that Pontiac and bought a new Pontiac.
The white one with the
And,
red
and,
interior, right?
and I got that old junk car. I got it started going down that hill on 81, I think it is. It goes right down through Minot. The car dealership was at the bottom of the hill, so I got it going, and you had to push it to get it going. I got it going and got running down the hill. I just pulled into the parking lot and let it run. And I went in. I says, I want to buy a car. He said, you have a trade in? I said, yes, I do. And I said, she's a honey. But I said, I don't shut it off. I keep it running because I want it to be in top working shape for you. And so he went out and he says, well, that's not worth much. And I said, now look, I used to sell used cars and I know how you mark them up. I said, I want you to show me that you give me $500 on that car. And he did. Now, of course, what they do, they mark the price of the car up $600 and then give you $500, which means they're not paying anything for the car. But,
Right, exactly, exactly.
but the bank saw that you were paying 500.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
that was the Pontiac that I had when we moved to McPherson, Kansas,
Yep.
and then when I took my trip to Nicaragua, I sold that in order to have enough money to go to Nicaragua and bought the little Volvo, the little
Oh, the orange
orange
kumquat.
Volvo.
You bought that for me, but you used
I
it.
know I drove it though before I gave it to you, and then I called it my congregational kumquat because the color of it. It
Yep.
wasn't it wasn't a lemon, it was a kumquat.
I remember
And
we went shopping for that car and we were looking
it
at lots of different used cars and yeah, yeah.
was
That
a
was a
it was a
that
nice
car
big
had a
car.
lot of issues, but it was fun to drive.
Oh yes, it didn't have any air conditioning.
Yep, yep.
So
Oh, that's fun.
some interesting
Well,
things.
someday we'll have to do another Mendel's Musings where you talk about some of the interesting stories from when you worked at PSRO and the I remember the well maybe we could just the guy who fell off the second story of the disco, and I don't know if that was in Michigan
Oh,
or in North
no,
Dakota.
that was a story that the doctors told about.
Oh, you just not when
And he had the salami in his
yeah.
pants.
But wasn't there one about a woman who was put in a hospital to have her ears pierced? I remember you talking about it. No, maybe I, yeah, I don't know. It was weird. But, and then uh, when Reagan became president, they did away
Oh,
with that grant, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, the,
They, I was one of the officers of the Democratic Party in the county there in Minot. I was, and they interviewed me. I had a impeach Reagan button on, and the newspaper at the state in Bismarck interviewed me about why I was saying to impeach Reagan. Well, the Republicans had sent me in the name of the corporation, had sent the corporation a letter requesting funds for their campaign, for their political campaign. And I said it's illegal for a corporation to give funds, and it is also a shakedown if you're dependent upon federal funds to fund you, for them to ask for funds, and that's a shakedown. And I said, I'm not about sending me money. They're trying to do away with my job. Well, they wrote that up in the newspaper, and one of my employees, who was a physician that was an employee, um, Resager, Michael Resager,
I remember him.
sent a copy to one of my board members saying, "What are we going to do about this guy? We need to get rid of this guy," or something like that. Talk about me.
Mm-hmm.
So I accommodated him. I got rid of him. I fired him.
Yeah, he was a weird guy. I
Yes,
remember him. He
yes,
was a weird guy. Well, the I mean, quantitatively, I would assume the program probably did save money, right? Save federal money, probably more than what
yes.
the
Oh,
grant
yes.
was.
And it improved the quality of care. That was what I was most interested in, was how to improve the quality of care, and because we established a system of peer review. Before, it was just kind of like they'd sit down over coffee and talk about it, but we established a system of peer review that they had to take notes. They I had a peer review nurse that was there that had to, you know, make notes of what was said and so forth, and then that was fed back into the system, and then we were able to check to see whether or not they had improved their quality of care.
Mm,
It was a good system, but the uh, Heritage Foundation were the ones that were advising Reagan, and of course they're that right wing group. They still are a right wing group,
right.
and so it was pretty dicey. But I had over $900,000 budget
Whoa.
just for my office from that. Then that was Medicare, Medicaid, and then I also uh, negotiated for a contract with the Indian Health Service to do their services, and American Family Insurance. It was the only standalone insurance company that got to do it, but the American Family Insurance also joined in with us on that. So
Amazing.
I used some of the skills that I learned, uh, in the legislature and so forth. I learned those on how to negotiate and how to talk.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure that the Harvard class helped tremendously too, just how
Oh
to
yes,
health administration stuff. Just
yes,
amazing how those things just dovetail.
yeah, yeah.
Pretty
So
amazing.
if I had to do over, I wouldn't change it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I liked Minot.
Anyhow, why not? Why not? Freezing, freezing.
All right, Papa.
Thank you very much.
Well, this has been fun. I'm going to stop recording, but don't leave yet, okay? All right. Love you.
You too.